don't need glasses, do I?
Is it all functional?
It's all functioning and it's rolling right now. So,
Where's the red light?
Was it
Uh,
Gary Hodgden? Was it take one?
I'm not the director.
Whatever. Yeah, out at his home. Today is what?
August 12th,
August.
2023, 1920, yeah, 2023.
Wow, man. You know, I guess we've been knowing each other for what, 40 years now?
40 years now.
Wow.
I moved here 40 years ago.
You moved here 40 years ago?
Hmm.
Oh, okay, so you had just moved here when we met.
I wasn't, when you were soldering wire, you said for me, and being hired to help that, yes.
All right, your name stated for the public.
Pseudonym, Gary West, for many years, but Gary Hodgden was the name I was born with. And, like I say, actually we're sitting in front of the room that would be the office. Right below us is the room that was the recording studio we'd put here. And straight above is the bedroom I sleep in. So the last 40 years has been almost every hour on this side of a house. And you can take pictures of that later if you wanted, but that's where we're sitting.
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, there's probably a whole new generation that don't even know anything about you or know that you even
I don't
exist.
know much about me. Go ahead.
But you are, and you were really known as a rock star back in was it starting in the late 60s or was it mid 60s or into the 70s and then into the 80s?
Yeah, I played music for about 25 years.
Okay.
My first musical gig was about 4 months after John Kennedy was killed. I was 11 years old, and that was 1964. So it turned out that was a flute gig, but because I sat in because the drummer didn't show up. But then that was from then on. Pretty much straight, about 12 years straight with my brothers, a band called the Chessmen Square.
Wow.
And pretty much starting as soon as I turned 12 in June that year, about 2 or 3 nights a week for about 12 years straight. And next year I started playing music 60 years ago.
Wow. How many instruments did you play? Or do you play, I should say?
What?
How many instruments do you play?
I can play almost anything except to read.
You play violin too?
Oh, you can make noise on a violin. Most of the guys I know do just make noise.
Because you know I'm a multi-musician, and people always ask me, "How you play everything?" I say, "Well, not no cello."
I know where the frets would be for the notes.
Yeah, I always had problems
I
getting
can
my
pluck
hand.
it. I can pluck it.
I couldn't never get my hand to twist around like that.
A lot of.
Let's go back further and stuff. First of all, I want to know something about your family history and stuff. I don't know how far back you want to go back to your grandparents or you want to go back to your parents.
I grew up going to church every Sunday. My grandparents were heavily involved in the church. My grandmother was the organist at the church for maybe 30 years. And my grandfather helped acquire the property that the church was on. I was on the northeast side of Kansas City at 23rd and Hardesty. We'd drive up there from the Southlands. So it was pretty hard not to have some music in her life. My grandmother would give piano lessons. We were too far away for those. But it ended up, of course, with Liberace on TV, that all kids get to play piano lessons. And of course we did too.
That house on Hardesty, is that the same one Baby Lee rented from your parents?
That's down the street from it.
Oh, okay.
The church, the 16th Street, it would have been the street, and
okay.
And that would have been one of my grandparents. They had some rental houses.
Okay.
He was a newspaper man during the 1930s. which meant he actually had a steady job, not a high-paying job, but a steady job, which was a big deal in the 1930s.
Yeah.
So other people who ran on hard times, they'd find themselves bailing them out, but then owning the homes and this type of thing. So that would have been, I forget that maybe Lee would have rented a home over there, but I'm sure the price was right.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, yeah. Because we started off at the house in Ruskin.
Yeah.
And then we moved over to the other place.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, you know, but that's
Yeah.
when me and her separated. But she moved in there pretty much.
I see. Yeah.
But you said they were involved in music some.
My parents weren't, other than my mom ended up more or less managing our brothers for some years.
Mm-hmm.
She was an outgoing person and that sort of thing. But the church tried to get my dad to sing, but he was a newspaper man too, so he was up at 3 o'clock in the morning on every Sunday, and by the time he got to church, he was mostly fighting off falling asleep at church.
Mm-hmm.
But they kept trying to get him in the choir because they said, "You sing the best."
Yeah.
I don't know, but he played French horn. That's where we got the French horn for my brother Steve to play French horn, and that's how I ended up on French horn in the 5th grade, and sat there first chair for about 4 years. That doesn't mean that I was really very good. It just means that nobody else was quite as good. So anyway, they were in the late 50s. My brother Ron found himself getting involved in music and bands back then.
And Ron played what mainly back? Because I know when I
The
was
first
messing
gig he
with him-
played, it was a bass guitar.
Uh-huh.
And then they thought he sounded like Ricky Nelson when he sang, so he became the singer. That ended up moving him to rhythm guitar and this type of thing. So that band, a band, the Vagatones, the Premiers, this was a period of about 3 or 4 years there between 1959 and 1964 when I got involved of several different bands, and they were playing, Bobby Blue Bland. They were playing songs on the radio. Walking in the rain, remember, this era, and Sam Cooke, and there was a blues scene in Kansas City at the time, within the suburban white area. There was blues bands, and so he was involved in that, but that.
This is all during the 60s, right?
Huh?
This is pretty much during the 60s, right?
Yeah, right. Early 60s, 1961, 63. As I say, the culture shift when the Beatles came out and all that, and that's more the time period of Beatles, Beach Boys, Rolling Stones and stuff that were becoming really big at the time. They were in 64, 65.
Right.
And of course that period rolled itself, this massive cultural difference between 1955, 65, and through the Vietnam War in the late 60s. So we were playing across that cultural divide, if you will, that had to do with the Vietnam War. Our church happened to be, in fact, my grandfather was directly involved in the 1920s. It ended up being helping to get the laws in for conscientious objection to war.
Yeah.
And so we grew up with that. Of course, now, in the Vietnam War, that meant, you're those new young hippies that are getting screwed up somewhere, and you're just chicken to go, and you're only a patriot if you're on this side of a line compared to the other side, and all that stuff. In fact, that kind of stuff kind of broke us apart from the church because it wasn't strictly that way. I mean, there's people who, even my father, believed that, after living through World War II, that it was really important.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we went through those. That was a climate that I spent my first 10 or 15 years being a musician.
Were there any, I mean, I know I mentor guys and stuff now, you know, that are younger and stuff. I noticed that during the late 60s, early 70s, when I was coming up, most of the artists coming up they were kind of innovating, had to kind of create their own lane and stuff to do things. And I don't know if we necessarily had a few people that would mentor you and kind of teach you. Did you have anybody that you can think of back then that would mentor you or give you advice, or that kind of led you and that you kind of looked to kind of inspire, I guess, or direct anything? You know?
No, we were trial and error, busting. Boy,
Yeah,
there's absolutely nobody in Kansas City that, and the more I look back on that, the more certain and obvious it was so much to be. I told somebody recently that the distance between Kansas City and New York or Los Angeles, especially then, but even literally now, it's like going from Iraq to London.
Yeah.
And somebody in London going, is there anybody out in Kansas City any good? You know, anybody over in Iraq any good? You know.
So as of today, there still is no real industry based out of Kansas City or whatever.
Well, you know, the industry is essentially the industry that promotes people out to where they're really successful. This is venture capitalism. We call them record companies, but they were just people taking bets, like in Las Vegas on different projects, and if the bet goes down, the bet goes down. If it goes, okay, throw more money in the kitty, let's go, we go big.
Yeah, I used to see the A&R guys just kind of come through and go through they say the A&R guys were frustrated musicians or something. And
well, it's interesting, the A&R guys, many of them were just, you know, hired for 6 months, see what you can find. And you got this card that says you're an A&I guy. Now there are others that were career A&I guys that had met later, and some of them would take a lot of chances. Some wouldn't take any chances. I recall the head of CBS really liking a band in Kansas City, even they'd go out and play LA. And he said, "Yeah, I go every time those guys come." And I said, "Well, so, but you're not going to sign them to a record deal?" "Oh, I don't sign record deals. I don't sign people to record deals." But he kept his job for like 40 years.
Wow.
And then there's other people that, you know, went out a limb too far, and then the records didn't sell, and so get rid of that guy.
All right, so coming let's see, into the time you were playing with your brother well, let me go back even, talk about some of the schools you went to. You know, grade school, was it local here? Was it in Olathe, or was it?
Oh, no, I was on the Kansas City, Missouri side, the South Kansas City Center High School here.
Okay.
And
elementary school, what, you know?
Boone School on Warnell Road.
Okay.
89th and Warnell.
And then was middle school, they would call them junior highs, or
Junior
what?
high, yeah. At the time it was south. It was right behind my house on 103rd Street. Center South. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in those schools.
Did you do any music in those schools?
I was in the band. There wasn't much of a program.
That's right. You were saying playing French horn.
Playing French horn. It was you know, there was a band class, and we give concerts once in a while. It wasn't in full orchestra.
Yeah.
It really wasn't a marching band either for a junior high situation. When I got to high school, that's mostly what that focused on. There wasn't enough money to put on an orchestra or anything going on like that, or extra chat classes. I know I think you said you had jazz classes.
Yeah, my school and stuff. Did you, in high school, did you play any sports or do anything like that? Or you know?
By the time I got, the time period I'm describing to you is that by the 6th grade I was playing music every Friday night.
Oh, okay. So that was, yeah.
So I unfortunately missed all those games. But I was getting.
And so they had you playing in clubs and everything?
Oh yeah. Most of everything we did were one-night stands and parties. They used to call sock hops, and maybe a weekend at a dance hall, and rarely, maybe in the middle of summer, we'd find ourselves in one of the traditional sort of music bars playing for a whole week. But that was pretty rare, and it's good that it was rare because between us brothers, every time we did that, it became a disaster as far as being able to get along for that many nights in a row.
Right.
But we were, my brother Ron was in his mid-20s across this whole time period and had a child, his first child.
Oh, okay.
So, and his wife was going to school. So it was very much a time period where, when I say professional musicians, I'm saying you made his living on these jobs.
Yeah.
For those 10 or 12 years, and that's how the rent got paid. So we were very fortunate to be as popular as we were and be able to have that many jobs to constantly keep playing.
You get radio playing locally or not?
Well, we weren't releasing records.
Okay.
No,
So
I
it's
mean
just live
we
still.
did release some records. I don't mean it that way, and we were doing recordings. But at the time, the only thing that mattered, and in a certain sense still matters, is for getting huge in the entertainment world,
Right.
is a hit record.
Yeah.
And that takes a whole machine of venture capitalism and
Yeah.
a whole thing going on for that to happen. So, and that wasn't present here. So, but the situation of playing, it was great. There weren't concerts here at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would now. There weren't national acts traveling. There wasn't enough money to be made, even for the national acts. Had one friend of ours, a rhythm and blues band, open for the Beatles when they were here.
Oh, wow.
We had two different times local popularity contest at the music stores, where people come in and vote for their favorite bands. And so, then I played Municipal Auditorium when I was 13. And that was opening for, receiving an award and opening for a band called Paul Revere and the Raiders, which were big stars on television at that time. So,
Wow.
and then several years later, a similar poll where we opened in front of Stepping Wolf, which was big there as the as Born to Be Wild worlds opened up, and now that the hippie world included bikers, and so and all of that cultural shift that was going on. But in those first 7 years, they were great. First off, I was making really good money. They used to joke I made more than the principal at my school. We were playing great songs. I looked at some of the set lists now.
Yeah.
Those same songs sell millions of albums still today, every year. And you're like, so it was pretty easy to make people happy especially when those were the same years that they came out and they were on the radio. It was very easy to enjoy and make the people in the crowd enjoy.
You never thought
the
of
songs.
yourself, did you ever realize or look at anybody as superstars or had that, or because you started so young, being thrown into it to where, I don't know if you...
What do you mean exactly, you mean on the national scene? Or?
Yeah. In other words, the level you thought, did you ever look at anybody to where you're like, I'm trying to figure out how to ask the question.
Well, I'll give you some description. I mean, you're just here looking out at the national scene, as people do now. Back then, there were rock and roll magazines, and cultural magazines. My brother Ron was, I remember him rehearsing at
How did you see yourself in, equating to everybody else out there in the industry or whatever, during that time?
Well, in that situation, this is one of the things we talked about giving people advice.
Yeah.
In that situation, you're looking up, and you've got all these magazines and things around you, and television and video and stuff, and these people are superstars. And of course, many of them, they're not a superstar next year. Others are definitely even a bigger superstar the next year, or the next decade, even bigger. But you're looking up at it. As a musician, uh, you're looking like at this. Okay, it's like a Hollywood thing. If we just meet the right person,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we're gonna climb that step right away or
Were
something.
you ever starstruck or any of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
well, even when you're in Los Angeles
Yeah.
or New York or Nashville, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
There are people you might want to meet there, but that's not how this works.
Mhm.
The simple fact is, you have to sit down and create yourself a product that's sort of undeniably good, and
And you learned this at a young age,
undeniably good,
right?
meaning if I was doing stuff and
Mhm.
Led Zeppelin is my competition out
Yeah,
there,
exactly. Yeah.
I have to be as good as them.
Yeah, and that's what you learned at a young age, didn't you?
Well, I learned that particularly after leaving Kansas City, moving to New York for 3 years.
Let's talk about some of that.
So I lived in, I've spent 3 to 4, maybe 4 total years worth living in cities where there's skyscrapers.
Uh-huh.
That's a little different world than I'm here now, which I moved to the country. I grew up in the suburbs, although this is in the country, although not anymore. I'm back in the suburbs because I moved out here. So, so see the world in a variety of different ways that way. But yeah, it doesn't work that way. That's where you realize if you want a capital investment person
Mm-hmm.
to say, yeah, I'm going to put $200,000 down to see if we can make you big.
Yeah.
They want to know if you're even close to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
You're not competing with the guy across the town here. And that's kind of a shame because there were constant competitions and probably still are.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the best band here and there and stuff. And I don't really, and it keeps people from collaborating together because, I play one kind of music, you play another kind of music, and we don't get along. And that has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly has nothing to do with getting big.
How long were you in
Did
New
you have a
York?
rhythm section as good as the Motown rhythm section?
Yeah.
You can say, well, was yours good? But it was as good. Was it as good? If someone just plays songs and you guys play all that cool stuff? They did.
How long were you in New York, and what group was you with?
Say again?
How long were you in New York, and what group were you with?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I moved to New York in '72, and I had friends up there. Jim McAllister, who was in the Chessmen for its last 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
had friends up there, and so I moved there, just to. You see, I came after those 15 years. The only part I really enjoy is the collaborative creations,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
creative collaboration with writing songs in the studio, this and that.
Yeah.
And not that I didn't enjoy playing, I did, but it's the traveling that kills you, and
Yeah.
there's always another party if you're bored.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're traveling for a living, there's always bored, and
Mm-hmm.
so then you end up. Remember having a.
That's one reason I didn't particularly lock into the touring thing or whatever, because it seemed like you just kind of caught in a loop of spending money for fast food and whatever, and not half the time if you didn't know how to save your money, you wind up spending it all.
Well, if you're bored, you're going to spend your money. So.
Yeah.
But I guess I did an interview on rock radio about the time after we stopped playing. Both my brother Ron and I had stopped playing, and they were
Mm-hmm.
asking about, trying to get an idea what was going on,
Yeah.
and you just, you get to the point where after doing it so long, it's that traveling, which you're just always sitting waiting on a bus or go somewhere, and then you get this great 2 hours or whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
back on a bus or whatever,
Yeah.
and you stay out there too long, you're going to lose your family. There's just no
Yeah.
question about it, and your young children if you have them.
Yeah.
And likely end up, like many of my friends, some serious drug addictions going on.
Yeah.
And that's what you see out there. There's a lot of people that do
Same thing kind
have
of
lost
happens.
their families, you know, but
Yeah.
they're traveling.
Same thing kind of happens with ball players too, doesn't it?
Well,
Sports.
that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not just here. Anybody traveling for a gig,
Yeah.
it's not coming home. You know, you go out for 3 months and don't come home, and then you come home for 2 weeks and go back out for 3 months. It's like, you know, go to
So
a
the group.
recording studio for 3 months, go back on it, you know. So there comes a point where you say, I don't, I will, I have a nature that I will probably die.
Yeah.
I will probably start shooting up or something, and then the
Yeah.
next thing you know, Gary West in Southern California found dead in a hotel room, you know. And I didn't want to do this, that, and so we stopped playing.
What was the group? Was it Becky and the something, or what was it?
Oh no, in New York. I'm sorry. Yeah, I started there and went there to and started immediately hooked up with a fellow named Michael Brown, who was written a song and songs and was an instigator for a band that was really big in New York in the '60s called the Left Bank.
Mm-hmm.
They had a hit song called "Walk Away Renee," which is pretty much known everywhere if I start playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a band called The Stories that had done okay, but Michael was a schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
I had one uncle who was a schizophrenic, and I enjoy schizophrenics actually. There are those times, but you know, they're honest and people, you know, can't help be honest, and that helps a lot. And so ended up writing with him for pretty much 3 years straight. We probably wrote 100 songs.
Wow.
Towards the idea of a young rock band sound that was popular at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up with one record deal called on Sire Records, which had
Yeah, I
people
remember
like
that
the
label.
Talking Heads
Yeah.
and the Ramones. And I used to show up to Michael and them to play cards at night, and my wife Becky would come with me, and the name Hodgden was too hard to remember or it doesn't sound, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So after a while, everybody goes, Mr. and Mrs. Becky have shown up.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
easy to remember. And then about 6 months later, how about the Beckys? Okay.
Oh, so that's how
So
they got the
name of the
name?
band, the Beckys.
Wow.
Uh,
Because I always, when I heard him say something about Becky, I'm like, okay, is that, was she had something? Did he meet her or something doing the,
no, she was pregnant with my son Wes.
when did you meet her, actually? Is that a story you want to talk about? Or?
Oh, no, I have a friend, one of my close friends was a great guitar player, had a band called Bartok Sroughton, and I went to see him during an Easter weekend where I wasn't playing that one night that he was playing.
Uh-huh.
And this is, I mean, this is 55 years ago.
Yeah.
So she saw this guy pull up in his car, and him and his friend got out, and this guy had striped white and yellow pants
Mm-hmm.
with a paisley shirt on.
Uh-huh.
And she started laughing. Now, it turns out that I'd had about half a bottle of wine, and she had just dropped some acid.
Oh, wow.
And then somebody said, you want to meet this guy? So she comes, oh, it's this guy.
Uh-huh.
And the next thing you know, an event. But from New York,
Yeah.
we, you know, the record was released.
Mm-hmm.
Had one guy, we were trying to get other singers. I wasn't particularly interested in being a singer. I was a drummer,
Yeah.
and I sang a lot. But I was just wanting to be a songwriter that didn't have to go out on tour, just like Michael Brown didn't
Right.
have to go out on tour.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had one guy that was that we were working with as a singer for some of the songs we were writing. And that guy went off and got a record deal with CBS.
Wow.
And the title of the album was the title of the song we wrote. And we see his name as the one who wrote it on the record.
Wow.
And you're like, and it's been recorded on a record.
Yeah.
And of course, then you go to a lawyer and say, well, we'll just have to wait and see whether he makes any money, because
Yeah, you always
you
told
don't
me
want to
that.
pay 30 grand for me to just make a point that this guy stole your song. We'd had instances, even with my brothers, where parts of songs did suddenly show up on the radio. And you go, what the fuck? That we'd recorded and written. But that's, we distribute the demos. It sits in.
You used to tell me
Some
the same
A&R
thing.
guy would say,
Yeah,
"Can't you write something like this?"
yeah,
The next thing you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I got it.
yeah.
But they're the ones at the Brill factory or something that
Right.
is producing big hits and trying to find the very best bits of songs they could. There's less of that these days, but it still happens, I'm sure. In rap, it's happening, and But in any event, but anyway, so we, essentially, I was broke most of the time there.
Yeah.
The only job I've ever had that I didn't work for myself, I was a messenger for about 6 months,
Yeah.
delivering packages around Times Square.
Were you in that group? Okay, I know Verlin told me that him and Van had already started a group called Shooting Star or Shooting the Shooting Stars or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they had in their high school years started a band called Shooting Star where they did it was sort of like a joke band of doing rock and roll, 50s rock and roll,
Yeah.
Elvis Presley and stuff like that. I didn't know them then at all. I only met them after leaving New York because I couldn't afford to stay there, and I'd been going back and forth to somewhere I met them, and they'd picked up a little differently and moved to after high school, moved to England.
Yeah.
And because they had a friend of one of their high school friends went there and got into a band that had a record deal and stuff.
Right.
Because here he was a pretty good drummer. There's no place to practice when you're in a big city, so
Right.
you get better when you're in a small town
Uh-huh.
as an instrument player. But or a drummer at least. And anyway, so they went over there and they ended up getting a record deal. Not much came of it, but they spent some time and got to know the recording industry in a way very similar to what I had gotten to know it. They'd done some recording in some of these studios. So they'd gotten serious after high school, as I gather. And they played somewhere at the Uptown. I didn't go see them, but someone said they were pretty good and getting a good crowd reaction. I did go see them later somewhere else, and then we started talking about mutual experiences as well as
Right.
maybe working together.
And they said they found out you were a songwriter. And that was something that they really needed at that time.
It appears.
Yeah. So now the group is Shooting Stars. So you went through different members. How many records did you do?
Well, we had five released.
All on major labels, wasn't it?
Yeah, the first one was Virgin Atlantic. Atlantic Records is a big company here. Virgin was huge at the time, owned most of the record stores in Europe, and had gotten huge. That shifted over the next year, or 2 years later, to CBS. So we ended up on CBS Records for the next 3 or 4 albums. So total of 5 albums there. There was a lot of other recording done and songwriting done, but that's mainly the.
And a lot of touring with major acts.
Well, yeah, yeah. We had managers that we'd gotten. Because I was in New York, I knew how we could probably get up there and play for some showcases.
Right.
And we took the band to one showcase. They did that sparked interest in a couple of management people who were starting a new management company. Then they arranged for us to come back and play a showcase at a little more luxurious. The first was at CBGB's, which we weren't really a CBGB's band. But at least people could come locally. The industry people could come without having we got ahead of time and left tapes around and stuff. And then an actual showcase where they were inviting hot rod people. So we got what you could say was a pretty good record deal, with a very good record deal, with great production budgets and a 2-year contract, so they'd have to do at least 2 years and not dump out if the first release didn't happen. Um, so those two were done again, all of them in coordination with Virgin Records, but and we were the first Virgin American group ever signed.
Did you make any money?
Um, the we were getting paid while we did work,
Yeah.
enough to keep
You
the.
get advances and stuff. Because I remember when I met you, you got that. Was it Geffen? Was the label or something that you were with at that time? I think. Uh,
No, it would have been right before that. I was putting the studio in when we were doing the album for.
oh, the what you call it was at the end. That was the Wes McLean one, wasn't it? That you was.
Well, no, we were doing. I was.
We met in '83.
Yeah. So the course of it was like this: we were making money enough to eat on, so we didn't have to get other jobs.
Yeah.
While we were working on the first two Shooting Star albums. Right. First one recorded over in England with Gus Studgeon and his private studio. It was Elton John's.
Mm-hmm.
He'd made enough money to have his own private studio. It was fully complemented
Yeah, you
equipment.
told me you was using. I mean, you was in some of the same studios that either the Beatles or the.
Sorry?
You were in some of the same studios that the Beatles and Elton John and some of them were recording in.
Not the Beatles, at least for us. I'd only. Well, I don't know where all the Beatles. It was probably recorded a lot of.
Probably, yeah.
But not at Abbey Road. I never worked in Abbey Road.
Oh, okay.
But this first album with Gus would have had Elton John because Elton John, Gus Dudgeon was Elton John's producer.
Uh-huh.
But this is after they made their biggest selling albums and stuff. And then. Later in the last Silent Scream album, we cut our basic tracks in London at Virgin Studios.
Okay.
By this time, they owned a studio complex where people like Genesis and Phil Collins had recorded his big hits at that time, and they had a complex, and we were recording the tracks for that song there, and almost. By this time, almost anybody who was anybody was at least
That's
doing
why
some
got
tracking.
That sound and stuff, because the equipment they had and all that stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
All that comes to play. Although, like I say, you actually have to use your ears too.
So in the, I came back from California in the early '80s, around '82 or something like that. And I started working around town here in Kansas City, playing some little. Playing with Holland Shed and a few other Bishop Cunningham and stuff. That's why I met Norman Brown and all. Anyway, I hooked up with Unidos.
All right.
And me and some of the guys, me and Mark Stafford go back to way back or whatever. And I met Ricky and Donald and Sandra and them, and we were recording over at Sound Recorders.
Right.
Which is over by KU.
I was trying to remember the name of that studio the other day because somebody asked me. Where did Ron do this?
Yeah, over by KU and stuff. So we had is a engineer from Wichita, I think he was, Rick Sanchez, who was working at the record plant.
Okay.
And so he knew Ricky or something. So Ricky went ahead and flew him in town.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
To engineer us over at doing recording, which Rick's dad paid for. I think he mortgaged the house or something for the. For them to record over there at Sound Recorders, and we did a few songs or whatever, which I was the new guy coming playing and trying to learn how to produce and how to write a little bit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, either you or Warren, one of y'all, whatever, had heard about this situation, I guess, or maybe saw Unidos somewhere or whatever, and talked to Ricky and Stafford, and they wanted me. Oh, they told you, y'all told them that you were looking for somebody to intern or that was interested in learning how to engineer or something like that.
Yeah, I think that probably would have been Warren.
Yeah.
Who would have been out in the nightlife at the time. As I remember hearing that he saw this great band and people and stuff like that. And and then you guys ended up actually coming over here to record.
Yeah. We finished up the album, we mixed it, and pretty much here. And then from that point on, you took me in and just said, hey, okay, hit record.
Well, you were a little better than that.
So I mean, I remember you threw me on the first, but the first thing you had me doing,
You knew what a multi-track was.
You was
sound on sound.
You had me wiring because I could solder because my brothers and stuff. We kind of grew up soldering and doing things like that. So you had me soldering. I remember it was Molex cables.
Yeah.
And you had me soldering that, and they had them little.
I still own those cables.
Yeah, and I had to sit there and okay.
I don't know where I'll ever plug them in.
2. And then line it up and then do the. Oh man, that was so tedious.
He's talking about the 128 pin cables.
Yeah. And so that was my introduction to studio work or whatever. And then I remember Warren and then put me in to do a recording session, and I hit record, and then it was, with some of your clients or whatever. And then something happened, whatever, and I rewound it. And then they wanted me to do overdubs, but I still had everything in record. So I wound up wiping everything. So that was my first time.
Live and learn, right?
That was my first, and it was like, okay.
You asked earlier about the Chessman Inn, would they find any mentors around Kansas City? Well, no, we had to erase the tape first before we knew not to push that button anymore.
But, as time went on, whatever, we, you went ahead, you and your family, you wound up giving me keys to the house here. I mean, you said, hey, you come and go, or whatever. I think I worked for the first year for nothing, and my grandmother would fix me breakfast and have dinner for me when I came home and stuff. We come down, I come in and open up the door, go down there, your wife be upstairs, you had little babies and stuff at that time,
Yeah.
Like I said, you trusted this inner city kid.
It might take time to talk about that. We talked about this earlier briefly, but I'll fit it in here.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a musician, it's just kind of a joke. You're always looking for somebody to play with, because and this collaboration is either just jamming together, but particularly for writing songs and recording them. You're looking for collaborators. A group of collaborators.
Right.
Actually, that's the job. You get a band together and stuff, and you collaborate. What are you going to play in this part? And you have to make that part up, so to speak. And so it's not that easy to find good collaborators who, when you work together, they actually feed off each other and do something better than they would have ever thought they'd do before they did it.
Yeah.
And the song becomes better because of it, and the performance is better because you get a good collaborative situation.
Yeah.
So when you find people in your life now, or back then for me, you find people that if you get together and at the end of the night you're going to go, that was good.
Yeah.
You kind of go, nothing else, I want that every day. But you also know that if they're letting down their whole facade, I'm this tough guy or whatever, you got to let your whole facade down to do that. So you already know how innocent or guilty they might be.
Yeah. People show you who they are.
Yeah, and not even, I mentioned one conversation with you, I mean, this goes all the way back to my upbringing and the church that I went to and my parents. They coming out of World War II, they didn't, my mom could give two snoots whether someone was white, black, Jewish, or anything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She grew up poor, 8 kids in one room. and this guy might be the one who gets me my next job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
and that is how it is, especially the music. But you know, so it was not a, it wasn't something I dilly-dally a lot on. And then that one weird thing happened where some guy that was maybe going to join Shooting Star goes and steals a bunch of about $15,000 worth of microphones.
Yeah, I know you kind of looked for a second. I mean, I remember.
I think somebody called and asked you.
It's like, okay,
you know, and then you find out later that he's been out in the barn shooting up, and they sold them to somebody 40 miles away. And that guy calls you and says, "Are these your mics? So you got your label on them."
Yeah, but I mean, my grandmother used to come out here and fish, and like I said, I used to come down here. I mean, eventually, like I said, I think I wound up doing a Baby Lee. I wound up doing a project with her in like '85, I think it was, you know. And so I think I paid you like $500 to do, you know, did that, you know. But from that point
and I went to Warren. I didn't get anything.
After that point, you didn't never charge me for anything and stuff because you know, you just let me work.
Well, there was trade-off there, though.
Yeah, exactly.
You were helping the program.
Yeah.
And play keyboards on some of the stuff I was doing,
and
helping to fix stuff when it broke down, and you know, so it wasn't all free. It was the barter system.
So anyway, we you know, we worked on projects. I think some of the other Shooting Star things and other projects. You used to have Donald Brown and Sandra Holmes and Ricky Carter, and Mark Stafford, even sometimes on the vocals and stuff.
Yeah, particularly during Wes McLean work.
And some of the other gigs and stuff, these Shooting Star gigs, you had us come out and just on certain songs do support or something, or it's nice to have fun when you're playing. And that used to
the audience usually likes it too.
Because we were talking earlier about the what was it, the Christmas thing we did together. You know, and Nothing Like Christmas.
I wrote this song for a few months ahead of Christmas. You know, because the year before it was like every rock star's putting out a Christmas song, and you know, and I was like, well, we ought to do one too, and I came up with a good idea for one, and then. But it immediately knew it'd be much better that at least one line came out of a girl's mouth. And the line that followed came out of a guy's mouth. You know, more of a, hey, I do this, I do that. And so that's better than the same boring singer singing all the way across, or getting bored because you're hearing him for 3, 4, 10 minutes.
So you had me engineering like, what was it, Paul Waltz? Who were some of the other guys?
You were doing a bunch of engineering and occasionally playing while you were the engineer, playing parts for people.
Remember we were trying to do some commercial things too for a minute there. It was some different experimental stuff. You had me pretty much, you were paying me to learn how to do this new, because we were coming into new technology and stuff. I think with you was the first time I ever touched a Macintosh computer. And you had me get on, what was it, the billboards. You had to use the internet, dial up.
Oh, right.
You know, and
it wasn't quite the internet yet.
To download, I had to go to this billboard.
I was paying $200 a month for that damn thing.
Yeah, I had to go there to download a file that took forever to download in order to put it on a floppy disk.
Yeah, just to get the sound, get the recorded sound of a harp to show up on my keyboards.
And then you had Horace Washington come in one time, and you had me just sample him, just sitting, with that, what was it? What sampler was it you had? Was it a Prophet or something like that?
The Digi Designs.
Yeah. And so you had me sitting there, had him, he said, oh, you're getting ready to replace me. You're not going to use horns no more. That's kind of the beginning of that. But you had me hitting him long notes and attacks and bends and all of that. So you created a whole sample of that. I think we went through drums, everything, and you were paying me pretty much to learn how to do this stuff.
Well, and to create a library so that we'd have one to use for our music and any other body that rented the studio.
So that lined up my whole future of being a programmer, as for a sound designer or whatever. Like that.
That's why you're so rich now. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Sorry about that,
It's
Craig.
not like I couldn't though. I mean, you
No,
know,
I know. I'm
it's
just,
choices. You know, it's choices. So anyway, I engineered. I mean, once all the way up to. I mean, we did the West McLean project. You know, and
yeah.
then you told me that the president got replaced, right?
Oh, yeah. So the
After we finished that whole project, we worked on it for a couple of years, didn't we? At least a
a
year.
year at least. So in
Late '80s.
just on Shooting Star, I'll bring some history up there. So I'll walk you back a little bit.
Okay.
So the Shooting Star, we had the first two albums that we were done. First one in England and another one up in. Spent 3 months up in north of Seattle in a private studio, and those albums came out and we went on tour with tour support, helping to pay us out, being out there with a lot of different headlining bands, and we were the opening bands and toured the country after each one of those. But the sales and the radio play didn't get huge. But we had good radio play here in Kansas City and in St. Louis and a few other cities, but not so much across the country. I remember hearing first time I ever heard one of our first album being played on the radio as we were driving into St. Louis. I was like, boy, the whole world's listening, aren't they? Wow, this is cool. But it didn't turn the money. Didn't turn us into any sort of concert draw or anything like that. So the contracts had been up, and that was probably going to be the end of the Shooting Star's recording career, if you will. In fact, we somewhere in that time, Van fired the managers from New York, and we were actually breaking up. And then we started getting these calls about all this radio play around the country, and so all of a sudden, two of the rock stations were programmers of rock stations, national programmers that still work today, were setting up competing rock stations in about 25 different markets. And one of them was using us to be sort of a competitive tool against the other. You would say that the existing radio was playing some a little edgier on the raunchy side of rock and roll, and we were a little more on the intellectual side of rock and roll, at least on several of the albums, and so some of our songs were being played in hot rotation around in about 25 markets.
Oh, wow.
And then of course now it's like, well, what do we do? Or we broke it up, but form back together to go out and tour to support the sales of those and to support the future of the band.
Yeah.
So then we did the next album in Colorado, up at Caribou Ranch. Mixed it in San Francisco with Kevin Elson, who does Journey, and got to know the Journey people pretty well, and used their artists for the album cover and stuff there. And that we did two albums in San Francisco with Kevin, and but this is intermixing, right? Recording and on tour all the time, and doing pretty well. During the fourth album there, which was the Burning album, somebody finally got around and saying, well, we need to pay for the old sales, pay the publishers for the old sales, and give you an advance to keep you on our company, So there was a publishing advance. Each record got an advance for everybody, but the publishing was separate traditionally, and a different contract and different companies. And so that got me an advance that was pretty good. The truth is the down payment for this house and everything here wasn't paid by that advance. That was the 14 or 20 years I'd played with the Chessmen.
Okay.
That I had a house I'd bought, another house, and then I sold those to start the studio because I needed some place to put the $60,000 worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to record and write constantly.
Yeah, and I had to go out.
But
pay
it would have
somebody else.
needed clients to help pay the house payments.
Yeah, how much were studios back then? Were they still expensive?
Well,
You know, I'm
we
talking about.
were bargain rate at $65 an hour
Yeah.
when they opened.
But I'm talking about out in the, like the Caribou and the other places you were talking about, huh?
Well, many of the places we worked sold it as a package for like month periods at a time.
Oh, okay.
But at Fantasy,
Yeah, I
it
know
was
that.
$250 an hour.
Yeah, I know.
And one place we worked in L.A. where a lot of huge artists work, Toto, and one of the better places in L.A. was $350 an hour.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They were more expensive because I know.
And they were clocking hours.
I know Hammer and them. They was
Minimum 8 hours, but clock the rest.
They would block out a week time or whatever, but it was $200 an hour. And then he had my room at $55 an hour.
Right.
So he had 2 rooms. So he probably did some kind of package deal, I'm sure. Where
No,
he
they would have. The record budget would have been coordinated. How big's your record budget? Here's what she can sell you.
Yeah.
In the large side of the music industry, it works that way. Now, of course, anyway. So that leads up to the how they got here in the studio.
Yeah.
And then after several years, we cut most of the vocals and everything here for the Silent Scream album. And the producer came here and lived for about 3 months.
Oh, okay.
And he was he produced The Who and all kinds of other people. And that was done here. But the local business wasn't enough to keep paying the rent or anything like that, and we decided.
Wally Buck. You worked with him, son?
Wally.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah, both albums that we did out there, I worked with Wally.
Okay.
Yeah, you met people after I'd already spent a lot of time with them.
Yeah, you used to tell me about them, whatever, and I think they became friends of me because of you.
I think most people there.
Yeah.
I ended up being in the studios through the whole projects, whereas the budgets wouldn't allow the hotel rooms and everything for all the rest of the guys, so people would go home for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, like their first album, I get to the end of it, the budget's up, and Gus Dudgeon, Elton John's producer, said, "I don't like my mix, so I'm going to remix it." And everybody, "But we don't have the money." "Well, can Gary stay?" Okay.
Quick question.
So I get to stay another month.
Quick question. When did you meet Warren?
Met Warren. Warren is actually a friend of my sister's.
Okay.
His wife was, and they were friends with my sister's wife's husband, who had a band and had tried to start a small concert venue here, the Mullenbrooks. And anyway, so that's the tie there. Warren was working for them as sound and whatever.
I'm talking about Warren Rhodes.
Yeah. And then anyway, there was a split up in Warren and his ex-wife, and anyway, he heard that there was, looking for sound people here, and we were, Shooting Star was now playing pretty regularly, so it was more of a steady gig than what he was doing.
Yeah.
And started helping. I don't know that we immediately brought him in on sound or not. I don't remember.
Was Bad Brad and all them in that same time
This
period?
was long before Brad. Brad didn't come on, I don't think, till we already had the studio up and running here.
Oh, okay.
So Warren was more or less part of the road crew during years before we got the recording contact, and then during the touring that happened right afterwards of the album releases, the first couple. And then he did end up being, we needed somebody who knew the songs, so that at least out in front, somebody knew when to turn the lead vocalist up.
Yeah.
So Warren was doing house sound or
Yeah.
monitoring first. I don't recall the sequence. We had
Utility
a
guy.
friend of Steve Thomas's, Dave Sherman, who was
Uh-huh.
did road managing, I think, front of house sound. And I think Warren was on those tours. It all blurs together.
Yeah, yeah.
But Warren was with us at the time that that it was starting up, and decided got that advance and was going to start up the
Yeah.
studio out here, and had bought this house and stuff. So he and Robert Scoble, first thing was to hire them to wire boards. Now Robert's doing pretty well these days, I think. I hope.
Yeah.
But worked with Tom Petty for a lot of years, for decades, and other people out there. So Robert was more recent to the addition to the crew, even though he was quite adept. And
So he was the one doing the sound and stuff for when you had me go out to that Def Leppard concert that
he
was
was
in
on,
town.
he was on he was mixing Def Leppard that year. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, kind of like
That's my first introduction to a big sound guy. What
the
handling?
producer Kevin Nelson. I talked about on our third and fourth album with he. Last I saw him was Michael Jackson was in town. He was mixing Michael Jackson on the stadium tours.
Yeah.
So these boys make a lot of money, and as long as they can stay sober and
Yeah, that was a whole nother level. When I watched them do it, the setups, everything, you know, how they were mixing and how they handled that whole situation, it's like, wow, okay, this is.
yep. And if there's enough money coming in at the door, then it's a good idea to give the people a good sound.
Yeah.
Promoters don't always look at it that way, but the artist is going, I want them to come back
Yeah, exactly.
to our next concert. Or at least get good reviews. But,
All right,
so,
continue on with the Shooting Star.
so we ended up moving the studio here over to with Mike Elrod.
Yeah, right.
And that's when you were pretty much being
Okay, before then, I think that's when Warren decided he wound up getting the gig at Fantasy Studios, and you switched me over to chief engineer.
well, that was during Warren
during
was involved when.
Okay, doing that whole process. Okay.
You may remember that Warren tried to be successful and was moderately successful of time aligning the MCI 24-track with the IBM 24-track.
Yeah.
IBM, what's it?
Scotch. Was it Scotch machine? Yeah.
No,
the Elrod head.
Yeah, no, it's
It was the 3M machine, wasn't
3M.
it? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's all the same company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean. Scotch tape.
Yeah, the 3M 24-track
Yeah.
and 16-track.
And you used that.
So that we'd have the full 48.
What was that thing we used to link them together? It wasn't a Lynx, was it? It was something else.
Well,
like
we had
that.
to have the time clock machine.
Yeah.
And then it
That
had all
was-
these things over,
That
and
was
of course,
so pain, man, just trying to get all the synchronization stuff we used.
And
You and me,
extensive.
you had me going through, man, with these converters and trying to sync the clocks up
you
and
smell these little
things.
solder joints in the back that just pop, and now
Yeah.
it's not working. and-
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, okay, we digress. Yeah.
so that was over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
remember Elrod, his studio was humming and whatever. I remember my brother, crawled under there and found, and he looked at the schematics, and they had left a component out.
Could have been.
And so he soldered that in there, and they wound up fixing that. It's like, oh, okay, just something simple like that. It's like, oh, okay. And he had that, what console was that? The Trident, right? Yeah,
All right.
the Trident console and stuff. Because you had a,
Soundcraft is the name.
okay, your MCI machine recorder, right?
Right, with the Soundcraft.
Soundcraft board. What year Soundcraft board was it? That was like a,
It was new at the time, so 82.
yeah. Which the electronics on that stuff just still had a certain sound, though. It was,
Yeah, I knew about it. There were a lot of consoles. I'd been doing a lot of recording by the time I got here, so I'd worked on pretty much all
I
consoles.
tell people about that microphone. I mean, okay, the ones I use and stuff. We know about your big 47, but those, what's it, the Sony ones, the two silver ones. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, no,
That were tube or whatever. They don't make them anymore. I mean,
oh, the C7,
yeah,
C33s.
or C14s or something like that.
C14s.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they still make the.
They make them. It's not. Is it who is that's by Sony or what?
Oh, okay, yeah, right. So, what's the brand that's?
I know AKG has a 4-port, and they have a.
It's an AKG mic now.
It is, but it's not the same thing as the tube ones, is it?
I think they sell it to, all these things. I think you can get a tube version. It's like $6,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were like, I mean, you had 2 of them though, and I we used to use them sometimes for overheads, and they were. But I remember using them vocals on Baby Lee, and
that's a
certain
great
people, or
mic.
whatever. And then when we recorded Van, you always just wanted to use it's a SM7 on him.
I didn't.
But he did, I guess.
People get into different things. That 47 is the one that I found that I like the best.
Yeah.
And pretty much for every vocalist, but it does depend on what you're trying to do and what kind of effect you want out of the voice.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But what is it? The C37 is it?
The C14.
C14.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was labeled. It was the 2 versions they had were Sony.
Yeah.
They had originally developed and sold them like in the 1950s. So I had 1950s versions of that microphone.
And I know it's going
to be different. And they had two power supplies separate and all that. You can, they say you can, certainly the C14 is still available. I'm sure it is. And the, just like all the Neumanns are still available. And all the Neumanns have now their 2 versions of those too.
Yeah, I got a lot
of... The concept being they're all the same diaphragm.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's changing after that is the electronics. But there's, of course, there's that other market where people have, in some cases, replicated precisely.
Yeah.
I think of those blue, what brand is that? Tall blue ones.
Yeah.
And then in other cases, looks just like it, but it's crap inside that thing.
Mm-hmm.
The diaphragm might as well be the SM57's better than most of them. And then we had a few different mics for the kick drum that were that it used used in different studios. Partly because it didn't have a great top end, but it had a bigger diaphragm here, and you had a little notch there.
RE20 and stuff.
RE20, and there's another AKG one. E12.
Yeah, and you had some other little cylinder ones that were AKG. I don't remember.
Those were Neumanns.
The Neumann 421s or something like that.
See, it's 40 years, so I'm even forgetting the names of my own.
I forget. It just came back to me just that quick or whatever.
Yeah, those were just very flat. Yeah. Extremely flat.
I remember all your gear and stuff. Oh, even the Valley people gates had a certain sound to it,
Well, that's for sure. All that equipment back then, with the electronic supplies, the way it worked, all that equipment, each one, and even the Pultec EQs. I remember going in to one studio, and they had like 6 of those. At the time, were $6,000 each to buy, and they were 20 years old at the time. Mm-hmm. And each one of them sounded different. So it's interesting. You see the you see the modeled versions that are in the computer, and they are giving the general tone, and they are giving, when it crosses a certain line, it distorts just a little bit in a certain range. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, every damn one of those sounded different.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So we were over at Elrod's place, and the group pretty much had broken up, and you were doing the West McLean. That was finished, wasn't it, at that time too?
Well, no. I mean,
did we finish a couple of songs over there?
Dan was doing a lot of work to remixing live Shooting Star stuff, and hoping to get some contract from it.
I know we did that Touch Me Tonight and those songs, but those were, you didn't have anything to do with those.
No. As I say, we did the Wes McLean stuff here.
Yeah.
At the time by the time we got out, this ties to something I said earlier.
Yeah.
By the time a couple of years had elapsed between us, between when we were getting a lot of radio play
Right.
and we released the album on Geffen Records and spent a lot of money recording it.
Yeah.
There had been some shifts in radio play, not just, part of it, not just, whether rap was doing better or country was doing better. First off, it's been a year or two since we were in the hot rotation. And second off, the radio station competition I mentioned earlier, the one station that had been playing us a lot in 25 markets, had started losing the battle of that competition.
Yeah.
And some of those stations are starting to shift over to country or something, whatever. And so all of a sudden we released the album, and now to a certain extent the name of the band Shooting Star is definitely not going to get on that competitors' stations, and they're the ones left.
Yeah.
And so not much came of that album release, unfortunately. And so the thought was to, as it happens with many artists, well, if we just use a completely different name but still do good quality stuff, maybe that won't happen. But the other part of that was to try to update and create a new sound.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at stuff we'd already done, trying to do really during the couple of years it took to do the Silent Scream album, of experimenting more with guitar synthesizers,
Yeah, I remember you.
drum pads and triggering and this and that, and ended up this time just pretty much using the triggering and taking songs without doing all this stuff and just going through and getting them done.
Yeah.
There really wasn't an intent to really break up the unit, but as it had been for quite some time, the unit wasn't in this creative process as much as it used to be. In fact, after the first two albums were done and we went through that deal of the breakup, even the songwriting collaboration was very different because of the arguments that happened there on firing the managers and stuff. And never really came back to the same. We lost our keyboard player in that process. Or he lost us, however you look at it. And so we didn't really have the same lineup, so to speak. In fact, during the second Shooting Star album, Van was having esophagus problems, so he was not singing, and not much anyway. And as I said earlier, I hadn't really intended to be a lead singer.
Yeah.
And on the first album, it was a mix, a little more, we're up here sharing the stage type thing. And now there's no sharing the stage, it's just me.
Yeah.
And although we were still playing the songs where we were sharing the stage, so it's not like it disappeared. But as a creative collaboration force, it did. And the third album coming out, you had usually looked at, we had Charles sing a song and Dan sing a song, but then I'm singing the rest of them and having to write all the words for every verse and
playing
everything.
timpanis, climbing up.
So that's how that carried on. So as I say, by the time we've gone through all these albums where so many of the guys cut tracks and go home and stuff, and there's no money. I mean, we were recording this new record on our own dime. If I had a dime, we were floating ourselves. And we had a good, Cindy Lauper's management was on board with us for that. But we had it work into where that and whatever we would re-record or do with a producer looked like we were trying to make sure it was ready to go, so nobody had to spend any more money.
Right.
And trying to make it that good, and it was that good for the most part. But then they were working with one of the primary long-standing A&R people who've been there at CBS for a long time. And then a shift happened in the management at CBS, and that person was gone, and a new person had come in. And that new person won't get any credit for the stuff the old guy signed, And so now we're just clear the books on his projects, and we hadn't been signed yet, so it was pretty easy to say,
Yeah.
nope, not picking you up. And then again,
I know you told me you had during that time or whatever that they wanted you to do a duet with Sheena Easton, and you said you didn't. I don't think you liked the song. That's probably was the main thing or whatever. But
I don't remember it exactly that way. During one of the deals,
it was a female artist, though, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
what I'm thinking of, the only thing I can think of that's close to that was there was a song that was written, and somebody was shopping it, and it was it became a big hit with the person doing most of the singing was Grace Slick. It was Jefferson. Was it not Starship? It was an airplane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the song called "We Built This City on Rock and Roll."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even though I could tell it was a good song and it was probably going to be a hit, I didn't really think it was one that fit what we were doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there was any discussion about doing a duet on it.
I remember you distinctly telling me it was a duet one with songs, but you was like, But at that time, that was at the same time to when you were starting the radon business or whatever too.
Well, that's possible.
And so moving into that, you wound up recruiting me into crawling out underneath people's houses with
a bunch of broken musicians trying to find a way to make ends meet.
and had me, what is it? Okay, okay, go down here, and then I want you to drill a hole in this wall right here, whatever, and so we can vent it to the outside, right? Supposedly.
Yeah.
And I drilled a hole, and next thing I'm looking. I think I might have pulled it back, and it was like some material on the end of the drill bit.
Yeah.
And I looked through there, and it's like, I look like a couch. And so.
Yeah.
I think Wes told me he did something like that too.
Everybody does something like that. Yeah. So I had to go upstairs and explain to the lady, we'll fix this hole in the wall upstairs in your beautiful living room.
Yeah.
Ornate and everything. But no, I got it. I got into the radon things partly because when we were in between touring and stuff and make more money, I started helping my older brother with his company that inspected and repaired buildings.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He in '76 started that, and it was doing pretty well, needed help. And when we were young, you mentioned Baby Lee living in an apartment.
Yeah.
My dad was kind of maintaining about 10 different houses between some that he had bought, some that my grandparents had bought, and some of his kids who had places that broke. Mm-hmm. So we had learned some of the skills of fixing buildings, minor stuff, not big.
Right.
Not specialists, expert at everything, or a jack of all trades, but an expert at none. And then along came a thing, the studio stuff. And all the work that you and I did in electronics, trying to figure out gadgets that were being made. I tell people I'm an expert in black boxes.
Yeah.
And we are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Throw a black box, let's open it up and see how she works.
Yeah.
But the radiation is just another bunch of electrons flying around. So. Yeah. It's not unlike trying to get the amplifier to not buzz because you got a light, what do you call it, a fluorescent light bulb turned on in the room and it's showering electrons everywhere.
So you pretty much took yourself and you educated yourself and became an expert in radon, right?
I guess that's how you'd call it. But a lot of it was easier for me because understanding the health risk was easy.
Yeah.
Understanding the radiation physics
Yeah.
was suddenly easy because it's not, electronics, and we're still just flying electrons around,
Yeah.
and only they go places you didn't think they were going to go.
So reinvented yourself and created a whole nother business to try to stay afloat, right? Pretty much.
Right, and as I said, by this time, I particularly certainly, did not want to going back out to make a living
Yeah.
off traveling, which is
Yeah.
what would have been,
Mm-hmm.
was something that I'd had 25 years in already.
Yeah.
and I know what would happen to me. I wouldn't have a family or kids that
Yeah.
that cared for me or anything like that. And so it became time to shift. I would have liked to, but there was no money to stay doing it,
Yeah.
and needed to support a family. Or I chose to support a family. That's how it works. I could have chosen
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to be dead in San Diego or something.
Yeah.
But
But you continue to do this. I mean, in 1990, I decided to go because Warren had told me about Hammer getting this multi-million-dollar deal, and they needed somebody to create a keyboard room.
right.
And so I decided to go ahead and get out of here and take what I've learned from you and everybody else or whatever out, and at least while I still was young enough,
No. I thought that was a good idea. I mean,
and I had
again,
divorced. I had divorced from Baby Lee, so
just because
I was single.
we had a much nicer facility, and Mike was great to work with, and even though we weren't bringing any money, we were doing stuff, and but that's a problem. We had excellent people, excellent equipment, and nobody who wanted to buy that service.
Right. Exactly.
Well, there were people, but not enough to keep it floating. We'd started a classroom to pick up some extra money.
Yeah. I remember we did a couple of clinic things. It went, yeah.
And so that was that time period there. And then, as I say, Warren had gotten solicited by Fantasy out there.
Yeah.
And
To be their
so
chief
after that,
technician guy.
you
Yeah.
were solicited,
Yeah.
I think, is
Yeah.
how the order went. And I couldn't feel anything better than happy for you guys, because you were going to go someplace that was a real industry.
I kind of looked back at it and I was like, oh, okay, I wonder if he got mad at us. I just wondered. I looked back at it and wonder if you got mad at us or anything.
No, not for leaving. No, I mean, I did have to sort of hold up and teach a few classes for free. The money had already gone to San Francisco, but I didn't care about that.
So while I was gone, from that point for the next, I was there, I mean, from 90 to 98. What happened to you during those years? What were you doing? Because I didn't never ask you that before.
Well, let's say I ended up building a business that would support me, and Ricky came to work.
Yeah.
Rick was the best carpenter I'd run into, at least musician carpenter.
Yeah. He was a worker. Yeah.
No, and he was great. So having that allowed me to then be hiring people and turning it into a full-fledged business for the radon stuff. We were doing testing and mitigation. I didn't have time to do much musically, although I joke that pretty much everything I did then, as before, as now, is all the same job. Got a bunch of assholes in a room, and we figure out how to make something out of it.
Yeah.
And things come and go, and people fall apart and stuff. But and those years, I learned an awful lot. And rolling up to about 2006, I was doing, I believe to have all your bills paid is what was the thought for the American dream.
Yeah.
And the mark of success. No money else going anywhere else, but least the bills are getting paid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that went through those years. Early on in that, in '92, I was asked to participate in an EPA project, a federal EPA project for radon in schools. We ended up working in Rick's district for 7 schools.
Okay.
And these are basically experimental projects on what works to fix large buildings and not. I got my name in the book that came out after that, as well as it's my fault. The title of it is Teamwork and fixing large schools. Because if you don't have the principal online, or you don't have the maintenance guy online, and everybody's like in different worlds, you're never going to fix this very complicated problem.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I got involved with that. Then I got involved with national standards work in '95, as well as a nonprofit for radon and on their boards and science and technical committees. Again, the building stuff I learned from one part of my life, the electronic stuff and the physics learned from another part of my life. So it's sort of, when the specialists talk, I knew what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, constantly learn, as you do right up until the day you die. You're going to keep learning something.
Well, you was always super smart anyway.
Super smart. I think.
But you
I've worked with. I've said this to some people before in these radiation, because some of these people think they're God's gift to this stuff, and you're like, I've worked with geniuses before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Michael Brown, music, as far as you know, he at 12 years old was playing Tchaikovsky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In a New York, what's the school? Juilliard.
Yeah.
But you know, that doesn't mean he can walk down the street every day, but he can play Tchaikovsky. So he's among them. Another musician I know, and then my father-in-law, who could do card tricks. Give him any number, he'll tell you what the square root is of the multiplied value before you can type the numbers in your card set.
Wow.
So it's like, there are people smarter than me, that's for sure. Yeah. But there are people who are smarter than they think they are. They're usually quiet. And then there are people who are a lot dumber than they think they are, and they're pretty loud usually.
Okay, you know, not too long ago here, you had a health scare, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a...
Talk about it a little bit.
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with this.
Oh.
And I'm out of cigarettes. Can I take a break?
Sure, we can take a break here and see what... Okay.
So should I just pick up there?
You were talking about the radon and Ricky School thing.
So anyway, that carried on up until the Great Recession there started in 2008, and I ended up having to do something different too. My son Wes took over that local stuff, and I basically got brought into writing sort of codes and standards relating to radon, and working with a nonprofit, plus under grants and stuff from EPA. And so that's what I've mostly been doing the last 10 years, and still doing. That's where I still get a bunch of know-it-alls in a room, and only it's on conference calls now. And
Wes is still doing music?
Yes, a little bit. I mean, he's totally full up too with the life and just making a living for his family, but he's actually got almost done completely rehabbing a basement studio with all my gear over at his house.
Wow.
I think he's thinking that if I actually live long enough, maybe I'll go over and record about another 20 songs that I've written since then. But
he had a studio before over off Warnell, wasn't it, somewhere
yeah,
over there?
he moved the stuff that used to be in the studios here and there, and set up a great little rig over in Waldo, and ended up himself being on tour, mixing and managing a band and producing a band that was going all around the country for it. They're from Kansas City. Did the one album there, and then they did a second album, but he wasn't doing the production, and between that had a falling out, and then again, there's just not that many people needing much of a facility to keep it running, and that's about the same time that stuff was happening to me, it was happening to him, so he started doing that, and I started doing something else, and thank God I still make a living.
And Nikki, that was the youngest girl.
Yeah.
I remember her since I remember in the like you got a balcony with some a thing looking over the banister. And I remember when I used to come up sometime to get some water or something like that, and she was always peeking out and whatever. And
Yeah.
So she was just a little baby back then or whatever. And
Yeah, she's right at 40 years old.
Wow. And she's really into animals and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's, you know.
She told me she writes songs and has some songs that she's written before and stuff. You know.
She doesn't talk to me about any of this stuff. Now, I never tried to bring my children into the life that I had. Wes got into it, you know, more or less. Well, Warren asked me if I wanted to go work in Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, good luck, but
yeah, I mean,
and then he was on the road, and
you think she should? I mean, she should go ahead and do something with him at some point, don't you think?
well, she never approached me on it to even tell me she was doing it. What doesn't surprise me, she can sing well. I know that.
Yeah, she said she played a little guitar, you know.
Yeah, I did buy guitars. And
yeah, I know.
gave the kids keyboards, but
yeah, I know Wes plays drums and guitar, right?
yeah.
So,
But
you passed it on. It's there, and the
yeah.
legacy is there and stuff. But that I know a lot of time the legacy of somebody that
Well, just like
was
you
seen
were
like-
telling me, I taught you all about samplers and
Yeah.
stuff, and I don't want to be blamed because you're not rich.
yeah, people. I mean, they refer to me. He's a legend. I'm like, yeah, a legend. What? What?
Yeah.
But you wound up. What is it? Not too long ago, you know, I had heard or whatever, and I think I eventually talked to you afterwards and stuff. You had a health scare.
Yeah, I had suffered a cardiac arrest. This is where the ticker just stops ticking. It's not clogged or anything. It's an electrical sort of thing. Interesting. It's what happened to the football player that everybody,
Yeah.
where he just got hit a certain way that
Yeah.
that somebody unpulled the plug on that one wire, so to speak. And most people do die from this. Tom Petty died from this. I was surprised to see that recently. Now, for me, it was just I told a joke about the fortune cookie that was with the Chinese deal, and apparently I went down face into the table. My heart didn't.
Somebody was there though.
My wife was there. The heart had stopped for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
But they had her pumping me to make sure my brain didn't die.
Yeah.
At least most of it hasn't died, I guess. I'm not sure. And I woke up 4 days later, and that's been 7 months ago now.
Wow.
And I'm still alive, so I'm a very lucky person in that regard. 80% of the people that this happens to never even get out of the house.
Yeah.
And a small percentage of them that get to the hospital.
And now you're able to tell your story.
Yeah.
Have it documented.
I don't know whether it's a blessing or punishment. But in any event, fortunately I'm doing okay. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can't really say, I'm as good as ever. You
No.
always, you know.
I got a friend that just lost his 19-year-old son, so it's like, I mean, it's like,
That's
yeah.
right. It could be 18 days or 8 more
Yeah.
years.
And we both done drugs throughout our years or whatever.
Yeah,
So
we're high-risk people.
Yeah. So I notice now with the fentanyl and all these other things, a lot of teenagers or whatever,
man.
they don't know what they can't do the same things we used to do back in the day or whatever. You know?
No, it's you know, it'd be. I mean, you know, I didn't really got into anything that was. Shall I say? I always took that road they say in moderation.
Yeah. Right.
fortunately, I could do that. Although, like I said, there were times where you felt you could certainly risk that
Yeah.
because just the way the world's treating you. But so I'm fortunate, not to have addictions of that nature. Smoke, but drink coffee, and those are both definitely it's not a habit; it's an addiction.
Yeah, we wound up losing Van a few years ago. I think he got bit by the mosquito, wasn't it? The West Nile virus thing.
That's what I understood. I don't know.
And it wound up. I mean, the times I went to see him or whatever, he was paralyzed and he could do a little bit of guitar work or whatever. But they wound up having a fundraiser, I guess it was for and that was the last time probably you and me had a chance to play together. You came over to the house and stuff, and we rehearsed. We're doing the sequence thing mixed with us performing live with it.
I was trying to. It would just be on acoustic, and you on keyboards and
saxophone. Yeah.
Is it a tenor?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was an alto.
No, it was a tenor. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I can't remember if I had my cousin's tenor.
What?
I might have had my cousin's tenor, Rudy, from the Scamps and stuff, which would have been one of them 1940s original, was a super 20s or whatever,
I don't know, but just you talk about me learning myself. Certainly, you sat down and learned something you didn't know 30 years ago. How to get the skills up and the lip.
Yeah. But we did. I mean, we pulled it off. It wasn't.
Oh, it was great.
It
was great. I mean, the only thing that didn't happen is I figured I'd be able to get people to clap along later, and I figured the band guys would have started it, but they just kind of sat there like, okay, whatever. There's Gary with one of his wild schemes again.
Yeah.
But
you were known for that kind of thing, though.
This is the entertainment.
Experiment. Let me try this.
This is the entertainment industry.
Exactly.
It's not just a musician.
You was always on the edge, wanting to try something.
Oh, you were talking about
and creating whatever. But that's where you were from, and that's who you were.
Stuff we were talking about earlier about are you a musician and the money, and you have to be as good as Led Zeppelin and everything. Well, the fact is that you're an entertainer. That's what people are. That's what the money's going to go for. You and I both know fabulous musicians who are so much better than most of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, 99% of the people are out there on big stages, and we have friends that are better than they are, technician-wise and everything.
Yeah.
But
I know
but people are paying money for the entertainment.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. There's a whole bunch of them that they stand there and they play. It's like
you're doing it right.
You're good. I mean, you're good at what you're doing and whatever. But they want to see engagement. They want you to be. They want to feel like a part of it.
Being entertainer is not a cop out. The problem is that even like me, I didn't care that much about becoming an entertainer. I just want to be a creative person.
Exactly.
But the truth is, if I'd have spent more time like Elton John being an entertainer, I might have sold more records.
Okay, advice. I mean, if you're talking to the new generation in this world we live in, which is so divided and so all over the place, and the whole music industry has pretty much collapsed into an internet world or something, pretty much, to where everybody can just do whatever they do. What kind of advice, or what kind of, what would you say to them? How would you want to address them, or this generation, or the next generation, whatever generation that winds up seeing this video, whether it be 20 or 30 years from now?
I think it's really a lot of what we were just talking about, and I've brought up a few different times. The creative collaborations are huge as far as being able to move a ball forward. That's in business. You got a bunch of creative people trying to find answers, but it's in music too, and it's in everything. And so the value of the collaboration is important. The days that there used to be like a 4-piece or 6-piece band, and people were actually coming to see bands because look how good they play and great songs. Well, that's diversified almost back to where it's like it was in the 50s, that you only knew about Barbie and Ken, the teenage idols, and they didn't tour because nobody would.
Yeah.
That those were the only ones that were successful. They were coming at you as sort of the Disney entertainment side is how they came at you in their lifestyle. But today, they're just, I marvel at all the great things going on at sea that surface.
Yeah.
And they're usually vastly creative. You know, and the ones that the ones that you just can't ignore.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're happening all over the world in all different places. They always kind of did, I'm sure. But it's now this open field. But it's still that creative collaboration as an artist or an entertainer, where there's more than just you having to fight the world yourself, but you've got people to work with you on being an entertainer or being and people. But in the midst of all that, a person has to trust themselves.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to drop. It happens, but for the most part, nobody's going to drop $1 million on your table.
Yeah,
the odds are just as good as getting $1 million as buying a lottery ticket, which isn't such a great odd.
Yeah.
But it's still that's the odds. And but you, whether you're want to be an actress or you want to be a model or a musician or you have to make it yourself. And even companies like Apple and Google and stuff, they are built on this putting together teams of collaborators.
Right.
That's how they moved the ball so quickly from before we had cell phones
Yeah.
to now the world owns them, and they own the biggest company in the world. You know, it was collaborative creations. It wasn't just stirring the pot to see what new one floated up at the top. That's maybe what a venture capitalist would do, just to see if any of them make it. But for yourself and for your adventure, the venture you're in, collaboration with, the better those people are, the better you're going to be. And the worse those people are, you can't pull yourself any higher than that.
You think the artificial intelligence, the way they're trying to design it to create music and lyrics and everything, I mean, you know, you think that's...
I wondered about something I saw on TV, a Star Trek episode that I watched. And it's done with words that are right off of a script. They're not really poetry, even though they made sure a few things hit poetic parts that hit the same high note, and phonetically open mouth, you know, so the singer could belt this out. And of course I can certainly tell how the influence, even though I'm the only one who knows it, every note was on tune. For like 6 different singers. I'm like, nah, that don't happen in later life. I mean, you got to miss a note here and there. But every note was on tune. So we can fix your voice if we want, and all kinds of stuff. But the interesting part is that the music behind it was more like coming from an opera. You know, so like scripts of words said, like, I didn't see that trick. What do you do with that? You know, it could have been done manually. It could have been done by somebody, a couple of really great composers musically, and maybe somebody to try to make sure we fit the text that the Star Trek crew is saying into those. But it also probably could have been created by artificial intelligence. And the only reason I say that, Wes had, my son Wes and his wife, they were starting to use this one website where you plug in a question and then it answers back. And she's been using it in her business for insurance stuff. And Wes is going to when you be around people long enough, people ask you to do these sorts of, there's an examination to become a certified radon professional, and and it's kind of intense. Not that bad though, but he's going to a thing to help write a new exam,
Yeah. Hmm.
and so he tried this and with the artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
bring me an exam on radar, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And he brought up an exam, and he said, "Yeah, there's about 150 questions that are pretty damn good."
Yeah.
So just as a research tool.
Yeah, if you use it as a tool, I mean, because I've used some of it even in artwork and stuff to where I can describe a guitar player sitting on a lake or something like that, and it'll draw up some.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can take this and tweak it around, load it in Photoshop, and maybe do this,
I mean,
add something on top of it
no
or whatever.
question it could be used dangerously.
Yeah, of course.
But same sort of thing too. Even what I was talking about before, you get a couple people and they've all got the same goal in mind,
Yeah.
whether it was music or entertainment or business.
Yeah.
And you start saying, well, what if we ask it this? Or what if we run this through?
Yeah. Hmm.
All of a sudden you have answers to problems sitting right on your desk that no one's.
So it can be a tool, but as you said, I think, it going too far.
It doesn't know how to ask the right questions.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's never going to know that.
That's like somebody, I mean, when I try to teach people about doing anything, fixing anything or whatever, you just got to know how to ask Google the right question or YouTube.
Sometimes you spend about 20 minutes asking the question so you find anything even close to what you...
Yeah, because they always say, I can't find nothing. It's like, yeah, you got to...
Especially since it went to all the sales thing.
It's the same thing with teaching yourself. People, I mean, you almost need to be taught how to learn, And that's another thing, because some people don't understand that whole concept of how you can teach yourself, how you can grow and stuff.
And there's a whole lot of people that think they already know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's one thing for a 12-year-old to think they know everything.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's another thing for like somebody in their 20s or 30s to take that on because they should now be learning what they don't know.
Well, I've had a bunch of friends and stuff that, or a handful of friends and stuff that try to anoint people and tell them they're great, they're teenagers or whatever. You're better than anybody. You're the greatest so-and-so. And I said, I still think you got to pay some dues, of living. And I don't think anybody should be anointed that.
I found that the process of learning doesn't end until you die.
Exactly.
And sometimes some big things get learned later.
Yeah.
But there's other things. So like the first 25 years of Macintosh and computers and stuff,
yeah,
we were learning how to run all these gadgets.
Remember the bomb?
Your
computer used to always, man, it's like I would do something, the next thing I know, that little bomb, that old, like Bugs Bunny bomb almost, wasn't it, with the fuse on it?
Right. And all the keyboard computers, keyboards and stuff, they were like, push this button for that algorithm.
Yeah.
And we could get in, got the equipment, I can get into any part of that sound wave, and but I gotta push these buttons for the algorithm logic to even get to that location, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is actually what happens in computer programming. Anyway, I was on that one call telling somebody, so well, bring me up the algorithm on this part of it. And they go, algorithm?
Yeah.
But I think the part of it that one part of it you end up learning that's annoying is that I don't know how I've stopped getting to the point where I'm going to accept learning all the apps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're still doing the competitive thing. There was a time where everything on IBM machines and Apple machines were different.
Yeah.
They're exactly the same now, only they
just
put a mirror on the screen.
Yeah.
And yet everything's named different, so there's a little bit of learning curve, but they all do. And all the big programs and all the main things you'd use, it doesn't really matter which one.
Yeah, yeah.
They're both they're all doing, somewhere hidden in there that you can do what the other guy did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind learning that.
Yeah.
But then you add on these 3,000 little doodads here. Oh, I can't get the camera on my house to work because I didn't, but there's no instructions that tell me how to.
It doesn't do 2G. I mean, it doesn't, you got
2.4G and the 5G. And
no, it doesn't do 5G because it's a 2G. Most of the cameras,
I find my old Apple merges both of them, and everything works with it, but nothing works with the new new modems.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and they're making all the software so that
it's It's what Apple and Microsoft used to do.
Yeah.
They're like making it hard for you
So they have to spend more
if
money.
you lose the one, then you
exactly.
got this whole other learning curve to
Yeah,
try to go over to the
exactly.
other, and they know it.
Yeah.
Both sides know it.
Yeah.
And that means I'm screwed because I can't even try out the best of them.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of that.
Yeah, you and
When
me
you get
both.
older, you get to complain a little.
Yeah. That's what I told people too. I said I can, I
my-
can speak your mind a little more too.
I was telling my son Wes that I wasn't sure what to do about taking the grandkids to the movies because I'm the only guy with long hair in line, of course. And wrinkles make you look like 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
To the kids, and this and that, and I said I don't know, exactly what to do about it. And then my grandson said, "Don't worry, Grandpa.
Yeah.
All you people over 30 are crazy. They all some got beards, some of that. Why are you worrying about that?
Yeah.
We're not worried. All kids." All of our 12-year-olds think you're just all fucked up.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, but that's what he said. And I'm going, he's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the 60s, it was anybody over 30, don't trust anyone over 30. That was a.
You and me both still got our hair though.
Well,
I said let me go ahead and do it one last time probably, and everybody seemed to, okay, can I touch it? It's like, okay, I guess.
I work here. I hardly ever see anybody. I don't care anyway.
Yeah.
But I did, I didn't want my grandkids to be embarrassed at this old guy.
But you and me both have always been kind of techno nerds, on stuff. So that's another reason probably we were able to click and stuff, because I read the manual, all right, check the...
read the manual?
Yeah, I didn't never read the manuals half the time, it's like, even when they went to fantasy, she gave me all them Studer books. I was like, okay, I never did this before, so why am I going to start now? And stuff, so...
No, I mean, it's good to know how to plug it in and how she works, but if you get in trouble sometimes...
I like figuring it out, though. I like the challenge of...
Maintenancing that gear, though, you kind of have to pull it out.
Yeah, you have to pull it off of that. I mean, just to look at the numbers and the specific.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but
you already know that they all work a certain. It's like somebody gives you a compressor. Well, you already know what the parameters available are. Let's see how this one sounds.
Yeah. When you hired me, you told me you said it was a whole bunch of guys that went to school for engineering and had this. But you thought I had a natural I just listened and I just did things instinctively. Or whatever.
Well, that's so many people that want to get into the sound engineering, and they go and take these courses and stuff, and they teach them how the equipment works and everything, and
they're gonna read the numbers,
that kind of thing. But what I learned specifically over in England with the luxury of working with one of the best producers in the world and on the equipment. Before that I was more interested in which pieces of equipment create what sounds, and if I just get the perfect sound, it'll make the difference to where we'll be, big artists or not. And that is important, no doubt, if you get the sound that whether it's boom on a hip hop or whatever, it's important you get what your audience would like to hear. But the truth is, it might be better to do the whole damn thing blindfolded. Yeah. Because it's your ears. If you don't use the ears and you're just relying on stuff.
There's so many technical guys that they come out of school or whatever.
That's
First
what
thing
I'm
they
saying.
start saying is, "Oh no, you got to roll off someone." It's like,
well, guys that come in and they'd been used to working at different places, and they'd immediately walk in and flip all the volume knobs all the way to 10 for the treble.
Yeah.
Mainly because the Tasco doesn't have enough treble, so they're used to doing that everywhere they went.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, no, no. Well, in truth, that whole concept of subtractive EQ instead of adding EQ.
Well, Roy told me, Siegel and stuff at Fantasy, he had told me when he was working at Columbia or whatever, doing records and stuff, that they had him pretty much set everything to unity gain, you know, the faders. And then they mixed it from the trims or whatever and pretty much got it. And then from that point on, you were able to just, and he said they just used one reverb and one delay.
That's exactly right.
You know, and that was it and stuff. And then most of those records and stuff from that.
That's what I mean. You know, it's even in, that's the other part of that thing. This might be worth including. Even in, it's true for literature. It's true for art, sculpture, you know, but music as well. But when you think of literature and music, you think of lyrics and things. It's not really much how you say it or how you paint it, or what. It's what you're saying that's important. And everything.
Hollywood. She used to dream about love. Her youth was lived out like on a stage. Left the boring world she knew at home. Made her starstruck way. Something that was lost long ago. To Hollywood. She used to dream about love. Her youth was lived out like on a stage. These days she hits the strip tonight. All the names of lights and the games to play. She speeds around and dives uptown and pulls out all the stops. She'll hit the top someday. Loves New York and California night and the glamour life of the
Check.
cigarette
Okay, it wasn't getting no audio, so we must have, battery must have went dead on that.
Okay, well, I wasn't.
It's still recording though. So anyway, you was just saying this is the way you spent the last
40 years on those 3 floors on this side of the building.
and you said that over there was what?
That's my private church on that hill where I go talk to God.
Okay.
And of course, there's a studio entrance that you spent many of the time passing in and out of.
Yeah.
And over to the right, my wife owns that part of it. Or it is hers. I don't know who owns it. But she keeps a pool and flowers.
And your dog?
Yeah. But yeah, for some of the guys who ever came here, still here.
Yeah.
And so it will be till they bury me up on that hill I just showed you. And I join the cosmos with the dust of my buddies.
All right. I knew I should have plugged that thing probably in. I should have got an extension.
That's all. I just thought you might.
No, I'm talking about on some, I don't know how far. I know we got up to where I did the, what was it? And we should have got that first part at least. I think we got most of the main stuff. And this other camera ought to still be going, so it might jump to its sound though.
Yeah. Well, you're going to do some editing on it.
Of course.
So I just thought some of that might be.
And say something about that again, just so.
Some of the people have been here before in the past. Let it still be in here. Still here. And windows I look out at a home this direction.
And that driveway you used to drive up to and park up next to the shed.
Of a fountain that ends up, the only thing that actually works to keep the pond from turning green. So it may look all fancy, but it has a utility purpose.
All right.
That's all, okay?
All right.